A credit card is a payment card issued to users as a method of payment. It allows the cardholder to pay for goods and services based on the holder's promise to pay for them. The issuer of the card creates a revolving account and grants a line of credit to the cardholder, from which the cardholder can borrow money for payment to a merchant or as a cash advance. A credit card is different from a charge card. A charge card requires the balance to be repaid in full each month. In contrast, credit cards allow the consumers a continuing balance of debt, subject to interest being charged. A credit card also differs from a cash card, which can be used like currency by the owner of the card. A credit card differs from a charge card also in that a credit card typically involves a third-party entity that pays the seller and is reimbursed by the buyer, whereas a charge card simply defers payment by the buyer until a later date. The size of most credit cards is 3 3/8 in times 2 1/8 in, conforming to the ISO IEC 7810 ID1 standard. Credit cards have a printed or embossed bank card number complying with the ISO IEC 7812 numbering standard. Both of these standards are maintained and further developed by ISO IEC JTC1 SC 17 WG1. Before magnetic stripe readers came into widespread use, plastic credit cards issued by many department stores were produced on stock slightly longer and narrower than 7810. Many modern credit cards have a computer chip embedded in them for security reasons. History. Edward Bellamy's looking backward. The concept of using a card for purchases was described in 1887 by Edward Bellamy in his utopian novel Looking Backward. Bellamy used the term credit card 11 times in this novel, although this referred to a card for spending a citizen's dividend from the government, rather than borrowing. Charge coins, medals, and so on. Charge coins and other similar items were used in the late 1800s to the 1930s. They came in various shapes and sizes, with materials made out of celluloid, copper, aluminum, steel, and other type of whitish metals. Each charge coin usually had a little hole, enabling it to be put in a keyring like a key. These charge coins were usually given to customers who had charge accounts in department stores, hotels, and so on. A charge coin usually had the charge account number along with the merchant's name and logo. The charge coin offered a simple and fast way to copy a charge account number to the sales slip, by imprinting the coin onto the sales slip. This sped the process of copying, previously done by handwriting. It also reduced the number of errors, by having a standardized form of numbers on the sales slip, instead of various kind of handwriting style. Because the customer's name was not on the charge coin, almost anyone could use it. This sometimes led to a case of mistaken identity, either accidentally or intentionally. By acting on behalf of the charge account owner or out of malice to defraud both the charge account owner and the merchant. Beginning in the 1930s, merchants started to move from charge coins to the newer charger plate. Early charge cards, Western Union, oil companies, and other companies. Western Union began issuing charge cards to its frequent customers in 1921. In 1938, several companies started to accept each other's cards. In the 1940s, oil companies in the United States used them to sell fuel and other oil-based products to a growing number of automobile owners. Charger plate. The charger plate, developed in 1928, was an early predecessor to the credit card and used in the U.S. from the 1930s to the late 1950s. It was a 2.5 in times 1 1/4 in rectangle of sheet metal related to addressograph and military dog tag systems. It was embossed with the customer's name, city, and state. It held a small paper card on its back for a signature. In recording a purchase, the plate was laid into a recess in the imprinter, with a paper charge slip positioned on top of it. The record of the transaction included an impression of the embossed information, made by the imprinter pressing an inked ribbon against the charge slip. Charger plate was a trademark of Farrington Manufacturing Co. Charger plates were issued by large-scale merchants to their regular customers, much like department store credit cards of today. In some cases, the plates were kept in the issuing store rather than held by customers. When an authorized user made a purchase, a clerk retrieved the plate from the store's files and then processed the purchase. Charger plates speeded back-office bookkeeping and reduced copying errors that were done manually in paper ledgers in each store. They created a numbering scheme that identified the issuer of the card as well as the customer account. This is the reason the modern UATP cards still start with the number 1. With an air travel card, passengers could buy now and pay later for a ticket against their credit and receive a 15% discount at any of the accepting airlines. By the 1940s, all of the major domestic airlines offered air travel cards that could be used on 17 different airlines. By 1941, about half of the airline's revenues came through the air travel card agreement. The airlines had also started offering installment plans to lure new travelers into the air. In October 1948, the air travel card became the first internationally valid charge card within all members of the International Air Transport Association. Early general-purpose charge cards, Diners Club, Carte Blanche, and American Express. The concept of customers paying different merchants using the same card was expanded in 1950 by Ralph Schneider and Frank McNamara, founders of Diners Club, to consolidate multiple cards. The Diners Club, which was created partially through a merger with Dine and Sign, produced the first general-purpose charge card and required the entire bill to be paid with each statement. That was followed by Carte Blanche and in 1958 by American Express, which created a worldwide credit card network, BankAmericard and MasterCharge. Until 1958, no one had been able to successfully establish a revolving credit financial system in which a card issued by a third-party bank was being generally accepted by a large number of merchants, as opposed to merchant-issued revolving cards accepted by only a few merchants. There had been a dozen attempts by small American banks, but none of them were able to last very long. In September 1958, Bank of America launched the BankAmericard in Fresno, California, which would become the first successful recognizably modern credit card. It was eventually licensed to other banks around the United States and then around the world, and in 1976, all BankAmericard licensees united themselves under the common brand Visa. In 1966, the ancestor of MasterCard was born when a group of banks established MasterCharge to compete with BankAmericard. It received a significant boost when Citibank merged its own Everything card, launched in 1967, into MasterCharge in 1969. Early credit cards in the U.S., of which BankAmericard was the most prominent example, were mass-produced and mass-mailed unsolicited to bank customers who were thought to be good credit risks. But they have been mailed off to unemployables, drunks, narcotics addicts and to compulsive debtors. A process President Johnson's special assistant Betty Furness found very like giving sugar to diabetics. These mass mailings were known as drops in banking terminology, and were outlawed in 1970 due to the financial chaos they caused. However, by the time the law came into effect, approximately 100 million credit cards had been dropped into the U.S. population. After 1970, only credit card applications could be sent unsolicited in mass mailings. Development outside North America. The fractured nature of the U.S. banking system under the Glass-Steagall Act meant that credit cards became an effective way for those who were traveling around the country to move their credit to places where they could not directly use their banking facilities. There are now countless variations on the basic concept of revolving credit for individuals, including organization-branded credit cards, corporate user credit cards, store cards and so on. In 1966, Barclaycard in the United Kingdom launched the first credit card outside the United States. Although credit cards reached very high adoption levels in the US, Canada and the UK in the mid-20th century, many cultures were more cash-oriented, or developed alternative forms of cashless payments, such as Carte Bleue or the Eurocard. In these places, adoption of credit cards was initially much slower. Because of strict regulations regarding bank overdrafts, some countries, France in particular, were much faster to develop and adopt chip-based credit cards, which are seen as major anti-fraud credit devices. Debit cards and online banking are used more widely than credit cards in some countries. It took until the 1990s to reach anything like the percentage market penetration levels achieved in the US, Canada, and UK. In some countries, acceptance still remains low as the use of a credit card system depends on the banking system of each country, while in others, a country sometimes had to develop its own credit card network, e.g., UK's Barclaycard and Australia's Bank Card. Japan remains a very cash-oriented society, with credit card adoption being limited mainly to the largest of merchants. Although stored value cards are used as alternative currencies, the trend is toward RFID-based systems inside cards, cell phones, and other objects. Vintage, old, and unique credit cards as collectibles. The design of the credit card itself has become a major selling point in recent years. The value of the card to the issuer is often related to the customer's usage of the card, or to the customer's financial worth. This has led to the rise of co-brand and affinity cards, where the card design is related to the affinity, leading to higher card usage. In most cases, a percentage of the value of the card is returned to the affinity group. A growing field of numismatics, or more specifically exonumia. Credit card collectors seek to collect various embodiments of credit, from the now familiar plastic cards to older paper merchant cards, and even metal tokens that were accepted as merchant credit cards. Early credit cards were made of celluloid plastic, then metal and fiber, then paper, and are now mostly polyvinyl chloride plastic.